Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We're diving into Lakota belief and ritual today, and we've got some really interesting sources for this one. A mix of anthropological texts, and this is pretty cool. A first-hand account of the sacred pipe tradition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, should be fascinating.
The Lakota worldview is so different from what many of us are used to. Well, they see everything as interconnected, woven together by this powerful force called Wakan Tanka,
Wakan Tanka.
the great mystery.
Okay, so Wakan Tanka, the great mystery. So it's like this all-encompassing energy field, like it permeates everything, right?
It's more than just energy. It's like the source of all things, seen and unseen.
Wow.
And you're right, it's everywhere, in the sun, the moon, the wind, even in the rocks and trees.
So it's not like a personal god in the traditional sense.
Not really. The sources make it clear that Wakan Tanka, it defies easy categorization. It's beyond human comprehension. And that makes it all the more intriguing.
That's so interesting. It makes me wonder how they reconcile the good and the bad in the world. Like, if Wakan Tanka is the source of everything, where does suffering fit in?
Yeah, that's a question that anthropologists have grappled with as well. But what's fascinating is that the Lakota don't necessarily see a strict division between good and evil. It's more about balance.
Balance. So like the light and darkness,
Mhm.
the creative and destructive forces, it's all part of this bigger picture.
Yes, exactly. And for the Lakota, living a good life isn't about avoiding the bad stuff. It's about seeking harmony within that balance. It's about accepting the totality of Wakan Tanka and understanding your place within it.
That's really different from how many cultures view the world, especially in the West, where we tend to want to separate good from bad. Makes you think about how our own cultural backgrounds shape our perceptions, right?
Absolutely, it does. Exploring different worldviews like this, it helps us think outside of those ingrained assumptions.
Totally. Okay, so we've got this understanding of Wakan Tanka as this powerful, mysterious force connecting everything. But how do individuals actually experience or connect with it? I'm thinking about the visions mentioned in the source material.
Ah, yes. Visions. Visions are absolutely central to Lakota spirituality. They're seen as like a direct line to Wakan Tanka, a way to receive guidance, knowledge, and even power.
One of the texts mentions Black Elk, right? He had this incredibly powerful vision as a child. That really shaped his life's path. But I was a bit confused about how these visions actually work. Do they just happen spontaneously?
Well, it's not as simple as bumping your head and suddenly seeing the future. The Lakota believe you have to actively seek a vision. It involves a lot of preparation, including purification rituals and seeking guidance from a holy man.
So it's almost like an intentional spiritual journey.
Exactly. You prepare yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's a serious undertaking.
The book talks about Black Elk's vision in detail, mentioning horses and hoops and all sorts of symbolic imagery. It seems like interpreting those symbols is a key part of the process.
You're right. It's not just about seeing something. It's about understanding the meaning behind it. The holy man plays a crucial role in guiding the individual through that interpretation, helping them unravel the message Wakan Tanka is trying to convey.
So it's like a divine puzzle. That's fascinating. It sounds like a deeply personal and powerful experience. But there are also communal rituals in Lakota culture, right? Like the sun dance and the sacred pipe ceremony.
Those are two incredibly important rituals that offer a very different way of connecting with Wakan Tanka. They move from the personal to the communal, expressing the interconnectedness at the heart of Lakota belief.
And both rituals have a strong visual element, especially the sun dance, which sounds incredibly intense. The source describes it as a physically and spiritually demanding ordeal, with dancers pushing their limits as an offering to Wakan Tanka. It makes you wonder what kind of preparations go into something like that.
It's definitely not for the faint of heart. The sun dance involves days of fasting dancing and enduring significant pain. But it's all part of a larger purpose, a communal act of sacrifice and renewal.
That central pole in the Sundance ceremony. The text mentions it symbolizes the axis mundi, the connection between earth and sky. What's the significance of that imagery?
It's a powerful representation of the Lakota worldview. The tree, representing the axis mundi, connects the earthly realm to the heavens. It's the center of the universe, a reminder that everything is interconnected, and flows from Wakan Tanka.
That's such a rich and complex understanding of the universe. The sun dance sounds like a really public and demanding display of devotion. But our sources also highlight the sacred pipe ceremony, which seems much more intimate and personal.
The sacred pipe ceremony offers a very different kind of connection. It's still communal, but it centers around this incredibly powerful object, the pipe itself. which is seen as a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms.
And we have Arval Looking Horse's firsthand account of this tradition, which is pretty incredible. He's the 19th generation keeper of the sacred white buffalo calf pipe. That kind of lineage speaks volumes about the importance of this ceremony, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Arval Looking Horse's perspective offers a unique glimpse into the heart of Lakota spirituality. He inherited this sacred responsibility, this connection to the pipe, and his account really brings the ceremony to life. It's not just a historical artifact, it's a living tradition that continues to hold deep meaning for the Lakota people.
I'm so curious to learn more about the pipe itself
Yeah.
and the ceremony's significance. What do you think we should explore first?
Well, before we dive into the specifics of the ceremony, I think it's important to understand the symbolism of the pipe itself. It's much more than just a smoking device. It represents the unity of all creation. The pipe's bowl represents the earth, the stem represents the sky, and the smoke symbolizes prayers rising to Wakan Tanka.
It's like holding the whole universe in your hands.
Yeah.
I imagine the ceremony involved a lot of reverence and respect for this sacred object.
Absolutely. Arva Looking Horse's account emphasizes the importance of purification and preparation before even touching the pipe. It's not something you just pick up and smoke casually.
Yeah.
It's not something you take lightly.
Makes sense. Everything we've discussed so far about the Lakota worldview points to a deep respect for all things, especially those connected to the sacred. What stood out to me in the source material was this idea that the Lakota universe wasn't just this one layer of existence. They saw like visible and invisible realms.
Right, and they believed that the world was charged with Wakan, this spiritual potency that flowed through everything.
Wakan.
Yeah.
Okay, so Wakan is like the manifestation of Wakan Tanka in the world. It's the force that gives things their spiritual significance.
That's a good way to think about it. It's the presence of the sacred in all things. And it's important to note that in this system, humans weren't at the top of the hierarchy.
Right, I remember reading that. It's almost counterintuitive. Because in many cultures, humans see themselves as the most important beings on Earth. But the Lakota saw things differently.
They did. Humans held a special place in creation, but they were seen as just one part of a larger web of life. There's a passage in the text where it mentions how the Lakota understood that humans, unlike animals, weren't instinctively disposed to do good.
Oh, that's right. They saw good deeds as stemming from family ties and responsibilities, rather than some innate human goodness.
That's fascinating, because it connects their understanding of human nature to their emphasis on kinship.
Exactly. The concept of kinship was central to their ethical framework. And it wasn't just about blood relations. It extended to the community and even to the natural world.
So instead of this abstract notion of universal love, their ethical system was grounded in those tangible relationships and responsibilities within their circle.
Precisely. And that's reflected in many of their rituals and ceremonies, which often focus on strengthening those kinship bonds, both within the community and with the spirit world.
It seems like rituals were absolutely essential to Lakota culture. They weren't just something you did on special occasions, but like a constant thread woven throughout their lives. I'm curious, were all of those rituals passed down unchanged through generations, or was there room for individual expression?
That's a great question. Well, Lakota culture had many established rituals. What's fascinating is that there was also room for adaptation and personal revelation. So an individual could have a powerful vision. That inspires a new ritual or practice.
Absolutely. That's reflected in the diversity of Lakota ceremonies. You had communal rituals, like the sun dance, but you also had more individualistic practices based on personal visions, such as healing ceremonies.
Speaking of healing, the text mentions the Lakota belief that illness could have both physical and spiritual causes. How did that affect their approach to health and well-being?
They took a holistic approach, understanding that the mind, body, and spirit are interconnected. So healing wasn't just about treating the physical symptoms, it was about addressing the spiritual root of the problem as well.
That's really interesting. It's almost like their ancient wisdom is being rediscovered in modern approaches to health and wellness, where there's a growing emphasis on treating the whole person.
It's a good example of how different cultures can offer valuable insights that are still relevant today. But we also have to acknowledge the immense challenges the Lakota faced in preserving these traditions. Their way of life was drastically impacted by colonization and forced assimilation.
Yeah, the sources don't shy away from that. It's heartbreaking to read about how they were displaced from their ancestral lands, and their traditional ways of life were disrupted. They were pressured to abandon their beliefs and practices, weren't they?
They were, and it wasn't just about cultural suppression. The decimation of the buffalo herds was a devastating blow, both materially and spiritually. It severed a vital connection to their sustenance and to their spiritual practices.
I can only imagine how difficult it must have been to hold on to their beliefs in the face of such adversity.
It's a testament to the strength of their spiritual traditions and the resilience of the Lakota people. They found ways to practice in secret, keeping their stories and ceremonies alive, even in the darkest of times.
It's inspiring to see how they've managed to preserve so much of their culture, despite these overwhelming pressures. And it's not just about preserving the past, is it? It's about ensuring that these traditions continue to offer guidance and meaning for future generations.
You're right. And it's incredible to see the Lakota actively reviving and reclaiming their traditions today. The sun dance has experienced a resurgence. The sacred piet is still honored. And there's a growing movement to revitalize the language and pass on those ancient teachings.
It sounds like a powerful movement, a reclaiming of their heritage and identity. I wonder if there are any lessons we can learn from this, especially in our own rapidly changing world.
I think the Lakota example is a powerful reminder that even in the face of immense challenges, culture and spirituality can provide a source of strength, resilience, and hope.
And it highlights how culture isn't static. It's a living, breathing entity that evolves and adapts over time. There's continuity and change, tradition and innovation all woven together.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It makes you think about how our own beliefs and values are shaped by the world around us, and how we can honor our own heritage, while adapting to the challenges of a changing world.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Holding on to what's essential, while being open to new perspectives and ways of being. It's like navigating that space between the past and the future, between tradition and modernity.
And perhaps by exploring different worldviews, like the Lakota perspective we've been discussing, we can gain insights into how to navigate that journey with more wisdom and grace.
Yeah, it feels like there's a real hunger for that these days, especially when we're bombarded with so much information and so many conflicting viewpoints. It's like we've lost sight of the bigger picture.
You've hit on something really important there, the Lakota worldview. It offers a powerful antidote to that feeling of being lost or disconnected. It reminds us that we're part of something much larger than ourselves, woven into this intricate web of life.
It's funny because recognizing that interconnectedness, it could feel overwhelming. But in the Lakota tradition, it seems to bring a sense of peace and belonging.
It's about shifting our perspective. Instead of feeling like isolated individuals, struggling to make sense of a chaotic world, we see ourselves as part of this grand tapestry, each thread playing a vital role in the overall design.
It's like that saying, we are all drops in the ocean. But what is the ocean
Yeah.
but a multitude of drops?
Exactly. And that realization can be incredibly liberating. It takes the pressure off. This idea that we have to figure everything out on our own. We are supported by this vast web of interconnectedness, and our actions have the power to affect the whole, for better or for worse.
That brings us back to the Lakota emphasis on balance, doesn't it? It's not just about passively accepting whatever happens. It's about actively seeking harmony in our relationships
Right.
with ourselves, each other, and the natural world.
You're absolutely right. It's about recognizing that our choices matter, how we treat each other, how we consume, how we connect with nature. All of these actions contribute to either harmony or disharmony within the web.
And finding that balance, it isn't about striving for some unattainable perfection. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness and making choices that honor that delicate balance.
It's about living in right relationship with all things. And that's a message that feels especially urgent in our current times, wouldn't you say? We're facing so many challenges that seem to stem from a disconnect from each other and from the earth.
Yeah, it's like we've forgotten that we're not separate from nature. Our well-being is intricately tied to the well-being of the planet. The Lakota perspective offers a powerful reminder of that interconnectedness.
It's a reminder that we are all related, all part of this grand unfolding story. And that realization can be both humbling and deeply inspiring. It calls us to a greater sense of responsibility, a deeper understanding of our place within the web of life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Lakota belief and ritual, what are some key takeaways you hope our listeners will carry with them?
I think the most essential lesson is that sense of interconnectedness, recognizing that we are not isolated individuals, but part of something much greater than ourselves. That understanding can be a source of profound strength and resilience, especially during challenging times.
It's about remembering that we are all connected, and our actions ripple outward, affecting the whole web. It's a call to move through the world with a sense of reverence and responsibility, honoring the delicate balance of life.
Beautifully put. And if our listeners are left with a sense of wonder, a desire to learn more about the Lakota perspective, then we've accomplished our goal.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive has been a fascinating journey, and I hope it's inspired our listeners to explore these ideas further and to consider how the Lakota worldview might resonate in their own lives. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep